myself. So I'm at Tufts University. I work there. I'm an administrator there in faculty development. I mean, so I'm up here because in December I completed my dissertation research, which looked at the experiences of non-tenure track faculty members of color and how they experience racism and sexism in the workplace, thinking about the way the contingency is exacerbated by racism and sexism. And so I want to talk a little bit about that for a few minutes with you all, just some of the things I think are important, and to hopefully learn from you all, have discussions afterward. I can continue to learn from the work and the experiences that you all have had as well. Just to give a little bit of context, so just I think it's important to understand just what I was looking at. So all the people that I discussed, I interviewed for my dissertation, worked at institutions that were majority white student bodies, and also they were four-year institutions, right? And so I think that's important to mention here as well in that work. But just to kind of touch upon a few points. So when we talk about the rising contingency, right, so we know that over 70% of faculty are contingent, up from 44% in 1975, right? We think about this, the university's turn to trying to maximize profits and how it's led to this rising contingency, this exploitation that we've seen. But digging a little deeper, we need to look at who's contingent, right? Majority of these people, majority are women, right? That's not the case in the tenure track, the tenure faculty members. Women make up the majority of contingent faculty positions, so I think that's important as well. Faculty of color are overrepresented in these ranks as well too. Particularly if you look at along racial and gender lines, you look at the experience of women of color, even more so. If you look at black women, 83% of black women faculty members are in contingent positions, right? So this tells us like who's doing the work, how we're thinking about contingency, and how it's reproducing, it continuing to reproduce systematic racism, sexism in the work it's happening as well. I think there was a report that came out this week that looked at salaries, looked at faculty, not just faculty, but it's in higher ed, the salaries divided by race and gender. And again, what came out from this is that black women make 67 cents for every dollar that white men make in higher ed. And the reasoning was because largely relegated to lower paid positions and contingent positions as well. So I think these are important things to know when we're talking about contingency. We can keep these at the forefront of the work that we're doing as well. I'll highlight just a couple points too. I think that might be worth discussing that came out from some of the discussions I had with participants from my dissertation as well, and how we're thinking about some of these issues. And one is that the question of work and labor and what counts as that, and how we think about position. For faculty of color, there's this extra work that comes with having to represent diversity and being in there on your campuses as well. What do I mean by this? So supporting marginalized students on your campus, supporting students of color and other students of other marginalized backgrounds. Can be also serving on committees, even when you're not supposed to because of your contract, having to represent that diverse voice there within that space. I think about one of the people that I spoke with, a Latinx faculty member. They spoke about the role, how because they were trying to hopefully get a full-time position, trying to get that tenure track position. They felt they had to do all this service, all this work to impress everybody that maybe this would be it, right? And so some of this included advising graduate students, which they had no business probably advising graduate students because it wasn't in their contract. Putting on symposia for undergrads, trying to work at the Latinx Student Center on the campus. So this really took up a big part of their job, but it was all work that went unrecognized. And so when we're thinking about what counts as work and how pay and think about that labor, it's all this additional labor that goes into it. Another person I interviewed, she talked about she was put on a committee, an important university committee, as a contingent faculty member, and she's like, why am I on this committee? She's like, I'm not supposed to be on this. But then she walked into the room, she was the only person of color in that space. And so because that institution did not have a lot of faculty of color, and most of them were contingent, she got pulled into it, again, not part of our contract. There's a lot of unpaid labor that I think is important to recognize in some of the work and how we consider and think about these things as well. I want to go off a point Alyssa made as well, talking about safety and feeling safe in classroom space as well. And this is something that came from several people I spoke with, particularly women of color, in their classroom. I think contingency does lead into an unsafe classroom environment for many faculty members. There is research out there that talks about women of color being much more likely to be threatened, intimidated, particularly by white male students in their classes. This was not, and so some of the people I spoke with had direct experiences with this. One woman I spoke with talked about, she had a student that from day one decided he was not going to follow protocol, not going to, go by the established ground rules that they had set for discussion. He routinely cursed her out in class, made disparaging remarks to her, to other students, and because she was in a contingent position, felt she had to sit there and endure it. She was fearful. She actually ended up talking, she had losing sleep. Her health started deteriorating because she felt she had to sit there and take this, and if she didn't handle this correctly, she could lose her job by the next year, by the end of the semester was done, right? She felt the student could complain about her, and she wouldn't be believed because of the idea that we have to get customer service representatives as faculty catering to the needs of students. And so she felt like this was fair, and she was legitimately scared and had nightmares, as she explained to me, that this student was going to come and shoot up the classroom, target her. And so, and this was not unique. There's other people who talk about this as well. I wish this didn't happen, but it's more common. I think we want to talk about this as well. So, I'm going to leave it at that. There's more things I could obviously talk about, but I want to make sure we have time for you all to ask questions and learn from your experiences as well. So again, thank you all, and I look forward to talking to you later.